Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We're delighted to be joined by author Michele Marcum here today to talk to us about her debut collection, her debut book, Reign No Evil, which is based on true events. And Michele Marcum is a graduate of Concord College and also of Marshall University's Graduate School. After teaching high school for 20 years, and she resigned to write full-time, her weekly column can be found every Tuesday in the opinion section of Ohio Valley Publishing newspapers. And those columns can also be accessed at www.reignnoevil.com. We're delighted to have Michele with us today to talk to us about this excellent book, Reign No Evil. So, Michele, welcome to Chapters. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Reign No Evil. What's it about? What goes on here? And how does the true events element tie into the book?
Okay, I decided to write it based on true events instead of as a memoir because of the nature of the events being paranormal. A lot of people involved in the actual story aren't as comfortable with it as I am. So I decided to just change it up a bit, and I'd say 85-90% of it is actually true, and all of the paranormal events are true.
So these paranormal events, where do they take place, and over how long of a time period did they take place?
In reality, there were several different paranormal events going on. So it's probably important to start with what originated the events to begin with. And this is just what I believe, but I questioned whether God existed. I was in a dysfunctional marriage and was trying to be happy. And I questioned God, as a lot of people do. And it was an angry questioning, basically dared him to prove to me that he was real. And 3 days later, we had water that was dripping in our house. And at first we thought the kids were just playing around. And then we realized they're not playing around, it was spraying across the room. And so for several weeks, that ties into the time factor that you asked me about. For several weeks, water was spraying across rooms in our home. We had 2 stories, a full basement, and it was basically on every floor. It would bust the light bulbs because the light bulbs were hot. It would set off the fire alarm. And there were many apparitions and things that my boys were seeing. So that all was going on at the same time. So for 2 weeks that happened. And after several events, I realized that there was a spirit in the house, an evil spirit, a demon, whatever you want to call it. And when I realized that, it took on a whole different, I took a whole different approach. I went through my house and prayed, and I contacted my preacher, and he basically said I needed to get in touch with the priest. So I did that, and he was able to come to the house, and we had a house exorcism, and we all became Catholic out of that because it did work.
So do you think that was in direct response in some way, shape, or form to you asking God if he existed?
Absolutely.
That was part of your challenge.
Yes, there was no doubt in my mind that was the answer. Actually, when God told me that there was an evil spirit in the house, which was 2 weeks after it started, I had started praying to him there. I was actually on planning period at school, and I'm again desperate and angry, and I'm praying, why is all this water spraying in my house? And that was the answer that I got, and it was very clear, and I was astounded. I could not believe that that's what was going on. I grew up Pentecostal, so the idea of demons and spirits and so forth at church, that didn't necessarily bother me, but it definitely was not the first thing I thought of when we were calling plumbers, anybody that we thought could help. The water company, the insurance company had people come by. We had upwards of probably 40 to 50 people through our house.
Wow.
And that, of course, included friends and family that would also get soaked. And we just put a trailer on YouTube. to demonstrate some. I did have some pictures that I was able to show of, like, the dining room table that had I had to take my paintings down off the walls and put them under the table, and we covered it with plastic. So there are some of that, those sorts of pictures. There were some orbs and pictures of that. I did try to video several different occurrences in the home when this was going on, and I was not able to, because whatever it was would not let me. It would go dark, it would go light. I couldn't video it.
Interesting.
But we did have pictures of the house, and some of the things on the trailer. It's actually on, like I said, on YouTube, and there's a book trailer on YouTube, and there's also they call it a talking head, which is me talking on video for about 5 minutes, and then the slides of the different orbs and things.
Very good. Very interesting. And that whole story takes us into what happens in your book, Reign No Evil, because we follow two characters, a girl named Savannah, who's a local school teacher, and she's in a verbally abusive marriage to Alex, who's a well-known police officer in the same small town in which your book takes place. But neither one of them are totally innocent, because Savannah's been having extramarital affairs.
Right.
Alex has been having extramarital affairs because she's really trying to seek the love and trying to get acceptance from other men. Her husband just continues to be unfaithful. So tell us a little bit about those characters and Savannah and Alex. As I read the book and as I learned more about their extramarital affairs, I kind of felt like, as a reader, that they really deserved each other in some ways. But tell us a little bit about them as characters and how much of what we see between their relationship is based on true experiences or true accounts for you.
The entire relationship that I wrote about was exactly the relationship that we had. It was a give and take, and I tried to be fair when I wrote it, because I realized I was writing from my perspective. So I did put myself into who's my ex-husband now, in his shoes, and tried to write from his perspective as far as why I felt that some of the responses that he had to me were what they were, and why he was so derogatory in dealing with me and making me feel very hated and not wanted and disrespected. And I think I did a fairly decent job of that. I did tie it into his work, which I think was, just from what I saw, was definitely the catalyst for his behavior.
And I the reason I asked that question too a minute ago is I read it as a cold read for the first time, and I didn't really I didn't look to see
you.
I didn't look to see if this was tied into your personal experience at all. And then I read it and I thought, boy, Alex and Savannah really deserve each other. And then I did a little more research and I realized, oh, this is somewhat loosely based on Michelle's experience. So. So I didn't want you to think that I wish that upon anyone, but I think what makes the book so strong is when you do it as a cold read. Even though it is based loosely on your experience, we all know of someone who is like one of these two characters, or maybe someone that we know that we work with, we're related to, we're friends with, going through that kind of a circumstance. There's very much of a of a situation where you can put anybody into one of those two characters' shoes. That present or past, and see that unfold, through that perspective. And you've got two very good characters that are great on their own, but people could substitute other people that they know or are related to into those characters' positions and still get the same effect.
Absolutely. And I do think that both of the characters, like you said, they both had their faults. So I was very well aware of that when I wrote it the way I did. I tried not to blame it on just one person or the other. It took both of us, but it did end up with me coming to a realization that sort of relationship wasn't something I could change. The only thing that I could change was me. And so that's what I started working on. And we actually stayed together for several years after that. Now, in the book, I didn't write it that way, but in reality, we did stay together for probably 3-4 years, say closer to 4, before we split up, before we divorced. And I am going to it's called Girls' Night Out which is tomorrow night. A friend invited me, which ties into that verbal abuse that's talked about in this book. It is a very prominent factor because it is a paranormal story, absolutely, because of the demon involvement, and I had attachments to me, which we can get to that in a little bit. But because of the paranormal part of it, that's a very exciting. Everybody's into paranormal stuff these days, but the underlying current through the whole story, the driving force behind my transformation there, it's my search for God, and it's the subsequent relationship that I have with my husband. So the relationship part is definitely dynamic in there as well.
Also, what we see, a couple other things happen in this book in addition to what's going on between Savannah and Alex. We have a murder that happens in the town. We have the family being threatened. And we also have sort of the wondering if Savannah's ever going to find the love that she seeks. Tell us a little bit about the murder in the town, because I thought that was a really interesting plot point in the story. What goes on there? What happens with the murder?
Well, it wasn't just specifically the murder itself that I really wanted to expound on. It was that I wanted to show that, because I want to leave a little bit for him to read about, but I did think it was important to show how much of a police officer's family's life is affected by people coming to the door, by the long hours, the strain, the stress. Yeah, everybody's got that in a job, I do think. And of course, specifically right now, and just what's happened with the police lately with the shootings, which is awful. And that, of course, wasn't going on at this time, but there's always been that element of danger. And most of the police officers that I know are just the most caring people. And I would even say that about my ex. I mean, very caring, definitely diligent in his job. And that's what I wanted to show, is that, I not only had the paranormal stuff going on, the internal turmoil going on inside of me. I'm with my high school sweetheart. I wanted to stay married to him. I felt like he loved me. I felt like I still loved him. And so I had all that internal turmoil. I had the paranormal stuff going on, wanting to know if there was really a God, and if he was, why wasn't he answering me? Where was he? Please show up. Well, he showed up in a very unusual way, and I couldn't have been, and I still can't be, more thankful for the experience that I had. It was the most difficult time of my life, and it was definitely the most beneficial.
And I know since, we see in the book, Savannah and Alex eventually get to a point where they realize there can be no reconciliation. They go on a trip to Hawaii. Alex tries to assume a change in geography will change the relationship, and it doesn't, and Savannah really realizes it's time to move on. And I know that mirrors your story, because you moved on after your relationship with your husband, and have moved on and really moved out of the area to some degree. Tell us a little bit about
Right.
how what's happened to you personally, and how that kind of mirrors what Savannah experiences.
Well, I did divorce, and I moved not too far because I wanted to be close to, my boys were still at home at the time and staying with my ex. So I did move to a town that was not very far from the location that this happened in West Virginia. And so I was still able to see them. And I eventually met who is my husband now. And it's a very different relationship. So I see a different side of marriage that I never saw before. And I'm not saying that to make any, I don't know what he's experiencing, my ex on his end, but I can just speak for me. It's completely a different experience. It's a different person.
So you taught school for 20 years.
I did.
And then left to become a writer. What made you leave teaching, and how is the writing, aside from Rain No Evil, going for you?
Oh, well, that is going well. I have been writing for a newspaper since October of last year, and I've been submitting my work to various journals. I have a journal that is going to publish the spiritual healing side of this, which I'm glad we're getting to now. It is, the name of the journal is the Journal of Health and Human Experience, and it's going to be out, I know, after September. I'm not sure the exact date. But it is based on my spiritual healing that came, that was the second component, if you will, of the paranormal experience. So I did see a demon in my mirror, and that was early on in the story, and that was true, and it was very frightening. That was the most frightening thing out of everything that happened. And I didn't realize that I had entities attached to me until I started seeing an energy lady right after the exorcism of the home, to just to basically to find some peace with my relationship, to see what else I could do to reconcile my relationship with Alex in the book. So I went to the energy lady, and I'm there, and I'm being worked on by her. It's similar to Reiki, but it involves angels, so it's an angelic healing. And while I was there, I had a seizure, and I heard the voices. I heard them saying to me that I shouldn't have came there. And so through that experience, that reconnection to God, which is what it was called, that was really the turning point for me. And it took much longer than what happened. Back to your time question that you originally asked, and I'll get around to answering eventually. That I condensed the time much in this book. I think it's about a month and a half. It actually takes place in the book, but it took place over from the time this happened. Like I said, we were together for about 4 years, so the paranormal part really was about 2 weeks. As far as the water spraying inside, that was really true to the time period, which was 2 weeks. But as far as the energy healing, I started with her, and then for several years stayed with my ex. So I was working with her after that happened. I didn't even tell him I was going, because I didn't want him to think, he already thought when I first came home and told him, hey, there's a demon in the house. He did not want to have anything to do with it. He was not going to be home. So the priest came, and he was there with my dad came, some other family members, and my boys were home. So my ex didn't want to have anything to do with it. And after it worked, he actually realized that it did. He didn't still like to talk about it. He wasn't comfortable with it, but that's why we all actually became Catholic. So I was really hopeful there for a while, thinking, okay, this is actually maybe going to work. This might be the answer. And it just turned out that it wasn't. And that all ties into the verbal abuse part of it. When I realized I cannot change that. It has to be him to change that.
And when you realized that the spiritual transformation meant something for you, meant something for him, meant something for your children, but didn't take away that edge to him or that abuse.
Right.
Is that when you was that the moment when you realized, you know what, like Savannah with Alex, I'm done. I've got to move on. In other words, was the spiritual transformation sort of the last hope that you felt like you had there?
Yeah.
Was that the last straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak?
I think it was that, and there was a book that I was at the library browsing this section, and I don't read self-help, but I was browsing the spiritual section, and at the bottom there was a book that stood out to me, and it jumped out and basically said, "Get me," and I tried to walk off and I couldn't, and it said "The Verbally Abusive Man," and at that time, I wasn't looking for it, didn't have any idea, never heard really didn't even realize that it existed. I mean, that may be naive of me, but I didn't realize that there was a term like that. I never thought of myself as a victim in any way. So I went home with this book, and I thought, okay, I'll start reading it. I was 3 chapters in. I could have written that book. And I sat there, and I was like, wow. This is what's going on. This is my life. This is what's happening. And this is why. And I couldn't put the book down. And there was a contract in there I ended up printing off, and we ended up both signing. I presented it to him. And when that didn't work out, he initially agreed to it, but it was only a few weeks, and it was like, this isn't going to work. I'm not doing this. I'm not changing. That was when I knew that if that contract didn't work, that was actually what you would refer to as the straw that broke the camel's back. That was it for me.
Very good. Bookerfly Press published your book, so tell us a little bit about working with them. How did you find them, and what was the experience like working with them in terms of getting your manuscript and your story ready for publication?
Okay, well, Michael Nost is wonderful to work with. He was referred to me by Karen Fuller, who used to write for the Charleston Gazette, and she referred me to him, and he read it, and he loved it, and he said it was ready to go. So we made a few tweaks, and it's all history.
All history after that.
It's
So just like that.
Well, it didn't take very long. I think I got it to Mike in March, and he had it back to me within a month. And we actually thought it'd be a little sooner, but I was actually on vacation in Hawaii and was still making changes, and that was just in June. Mm-hmm. And after that, it really flew. He got it turned in, and we were very surprised that it came back. It got printed and in my driveway before I got back from Hawaii 3 days later, and we thought we were going to be pushing it for like the July the 22nd is what we were shooting for. Mm-hmm. Well, we ended up releasing it on the 8th. So, and we got to donate $250 to the flood victims. We did that from the proceeds from the first day. So yeah, he's wonderful to work with, and it's been a very pleasant experience. And the gentleman who did my cover, oh wow, I don't know if you want to show that.
Yes.
He really.
We can let you show that.
Okay, yes. I took a picture of water that I found from Google, and I showed it to Courtney Skinner, who did this. He's from Virginia, and Mike put me in touch with him. And he was actually in the movie, Evan Almighty.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So he did this from a picture of water. We decided to make faces in it. And I wanted it to be spooky and kind of eerie, but I didn't want it to be like blood and gore, because it's not a bloody and gory story. Mm-hmm. It's actually very inspirational, and it's actually funny. I have a very funny sense of humor, I guess. But it's got the demon's face in here, and he did a wonderful job with it. Exactly what I was wanting. So I couldn't be happier with that.
So you had a good chance, a good opportunity to have him sort of communicate some of the themes of the book.
Yes.
So what are you working on next? What is in Michele Marcum's repertoire for the next thing you're working on in addition to your newspaper column? What are you working on? Are you working on another book? And if so, what's it going to be about?
I am working on another book. It's called The Emerald Island Elixir. I had the opportunity to go to Ireland for my honeymoon last year, and it is a magical little country. I loved it. And I didn't get to see a leprechaun, but I did see a rainbow.
Very good.
And I loved it. So my setting for this story is there, and it's about a walk-in, which if you don't know what that is, I guess I could explain a little bit, but it's basically someone who takes over another person's body.
Interesting, very good. And you're right about Ireland. I've been there, and there's a few places you visit that look like the postcards that you see or look like the advertisements on TV, and Ireland is one of those places. It looks exactly like you imagine it would, mm-hmm. exactly like it's portrayed on television, exactly like you see, in those postcards.
It is.
It's a beautiful place. So, where are you in the process of that book? How far along are you? And do you have? Are you going to use Book or Fly Press again? And if so, is there a timetable for when that book might be out?
I do not know. I very well may use Book or Fly again. It was a very pleasant experience. I don't know when it'll be out. I'm in about chapter 5, and I do have the entire outline done. So I'm using my column as a Life Speaks piece that I'm attaching to my website, actually, on reignnoevil.com. So there's a link there that you can go to, Life Speaks. And I also have Appalachian Independent Radio that is talking to me about doing a segment of a show here and there for them, maybe weekly. So I'm actually ironing that down Monday, I hope. So there's a lot of things in the works. So after I quit teaching, it just felt right to me. Of course, I taught English, so
sure.
That was always my field. But Ireland was magical. I walked in one of the bars over there, and the pub, we should say, right? Walked in, and you know what they were singing? West Virginia Mountain Mama, take me home.
Good. Yeah.
I looked at my husband. I said, "Can you believe? What are the chances of the last line they were singing when we walked in?"
Very interesting.
Yes.
Very good. So, Michele, in our final moments with you here today, if someone wants to get in contact with you to talk to you more about your experiences or more about Reign No Evil or find out more about your newspaper columns, how can they get in contact with you? And also, where can they get a copy of your book?
Okay. The books are here at Empire Books. They are on Amazon now, too, so that's great. I do have some local signings. The best way is just to get on reignnoevil.com, and there is a schedule there. It tells you where I will be. They are also at the Mason Jar in Point Pleasant and at Capitol Market and Taylor's Bookstore in Charleston. I'm trying to keep tabs right now where they are, because there are some that I'm just taking there myself, of course.
Very good. Michele Marcum has been our guest here today on Chapters. We've been talking about her brand new book, Reign No Evil, which is based on true events, and it follows two very interesting characters in Savannah and Alex, who are interesting in and of their own right and their own experiences. But then when you know that it's loosely based on Michelle's experiences in her life, makes it all that more powerful. It's a great book, and anybody that's looking for something to read, I would encourage them to pick it up. So congratulations to you, Michele, on the publication of the book. And once you get your next book done, we'll have you back on Chapters to talk about it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We wanted to also take a moment to say thanks to Natalie Sheets and the staff and management of Empire Books and News for their on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News and pick up a copy of Michele Marcum's new book, Reign No Evil, and also check out some of the other works published by the authors, editors, and publishers featured here on the program. All of those are for sale at Empire Books and News at Pullman Square in downtown Huntington. And if you like to use social media, we'd love to hear from you through one of the many ways we have established for you to interact with us here on the program. If you like email, we have an email address where you can reach out to us, lp4@zoominternet.net. That's the way to get in contact with us. Please let us know your name and where you're writing from when you do send those emails. If you're a YouTube user, the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube is the easiest way to catch previous episodes of Chapters, maybe that you've missed somewhere along the way. That address is also here at the bottom of the screen, youtube.com/Armstrong One Wire. That's all one word. From there, click on the Chapters link, and you can go back and see all of those previously archived episodes. And if you're a Facebook user and you like Facebook, we also have a Chapters page on Facebook. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/Chapters, or just go to the search field on your Facebook screen, type in Chapters, and we have most of our recent episodes archived there for you as well, and you have a chance to interact with some other viewers of the program as well via Facebook. So we appreciate all of you that have reached out to us through one of those social media formats, but if you like social media, you can stay in contact with us here on the program using one of those means. So we appreciate that so much, and we appreciate Armstrong Television's support of all those social media platforms as we continue to interview authors, editors, and publishers from the tri-state region, and also bring those episodes and that information to you. And that will do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.